This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror program at 91.3 FM, WCW in Worcester, Massachusetts, and on Radio of Horror on YouTube and on VidMe if you're not catching this interview when it is playing live. This is a recorded interview, so no phone calls, please. And as we do on Radio of Horror, we also cover science fiction and fantasy. And tonight on the show, I am joined with my partner on the Sunstone audio series, O.F. Yang.
Hello.
And we will be talking with one of the most acclaimed writers in comic books in the DC Comicverse as well as the Bat Universe, J.H. Williams III. Thank you for coming on the show with us, J.H. Williams.
You bet.
What do you prefer people call you, by the way, so we're not just saying J.H. Williams over and over again?
J.H. is fine.
Okay, J.H. J.H., just out of curiosity, as the last thing that I happened to read by you was the Sandman book that you worked on, which was a lot of fun. What are you currently up to these days?
I'm working on a variety of projects. Right now I'm working on a creator-owned project that I can't say what it is or for who. And I finished recently a 50 illustrations project for another thing that I can't say what it's for either. So, I have just finished co-writing a graphic novel that I can't say what it is either. So, a lot of these things probably won't see the light of day till next year at some point.
All very hush-hush material, huh?
Yeah, it's, those sorts of things you don't want to jump the gun and talk about stuff before it's ready to be talked about. And part of it, the illustrated thing that I did, that I've been doing teasers on Twitter for, that was, the publisher said, I could go ahead and tease stuff, but I couldn't say for what or for who, that sort of thing. So, there's PR politics to contend with a lot of these sort of things, and you just gotta go with the flow. And as far as the creator-owned project, it's the sort of thing I don't want to talk about it until I have a certain amount of it done. Mm-hmm. And I'm only an issue and 3/4 of the way on the second issue into it. And I don't want to even solicit the project until I have at least 5 issues done. So. Oh
no, I completely understand that. Yang, do you have a question for JH?
I was actually really interested in your art, so I actually recently picked up a bunch of these old issues of Crossing Midnight, which you did the cover art for. So I was wondering what the difference is between doing something where you're writing and drawing something like Batwoman, or a series like Crossing Midnight where you basically did a lot of the cover art for it.
For me, it's sort of what I like about doing cover pieces for a project I don't have anything else to do with. It's a different creative outlet than the other stuff. It's less meticulous in terms of investment on it. And I kind of like the idea of being able to jump in and out on something, but still be able to sort of put a stamp on a project without saying, oh, this is my project. This is, Crossing Midnight was Mike Carey and Jim Fern all the way, but I always kind of like the idea of doing covers for something that is, a quality project. And it's a different kind of challenge. So, I have to understand the gist of the story and what each issue is involving. I don't know. I don't have to sit there and focus on every little detail of it. And there's something appealing about that. That's sort of why I liked doing this illustrated project that I talked about briefly, because it exercises different muscles. You go in and just get it done without having to worry about, all the ins and outs of the story from a writing standpoint. It's more of focusing on coming up with one interesting image after another that, hopefully people will like. It's a different mindset, I guess.
How long does it take to get a typical 22-page comic book story written for you?
Written by me or for me?
Or that you write?
Oh, well, the script scripting process, can take various amounts of time. I guess it depends on, what's involved in the issue, but generally, like the thing I'm working on now, a script can be ready, in roughly a week, sometimes less. But then even after that, there might be tweaks that might happen to dialogue and stuff like that after it gets, illustrated and things like that. So it's pretty quick, I think. I don't know. There's probably some writers out there that can probably write, comic scripts way faster than that. In terms of, the actual artwork of it, it can take a while. I can only really do 2 completely finished pages a week. And when I say finished pages, that's fully inked. And usually I have a lot of rendering going on using washes and various other media. So when you add that up over the course of the issue, 22 pages or 24 pages, like Sandman was 24, this current project is going to be 24 pages an issue. It can take a while. A good, 3 months, I guess.
Is it easier to do it with a character that you're really familiar with, or is it more of a challenge to do it with somebody that you've never written before?
I think it's more of a challenge to do it with something that's entirely new. When you're dealing with a character, say, like Batman as an example, it's such an iconic character that there's certain things that you just are going to have in your head right away about it. But when you're creating something entirely new from scratch, where there's characters that you're dealing with that no one has seen before, there's and not just the characters but the settings too, it can actually add more time, I think, because you're trying to create a world that no one has seen before, and you want to be able to sell that world to the reader as thoroughly as you can.
So for something like Sandman, where obviously it has its history and it had its own definite art style with the first series, do you feel like you had to go back and do your own research for that, and did that increase the amount of time you spent on doing the art for it, or did you kind of go into the project with a fresh set of eyes and your own perspective?
Yeah, what I did before I started working on the project, I went back and reread all the entire series. I felt that was super important because I knew that Sandman Overture was going to be dealing with stuff from that series, but all sort of in a sequel sort of fashion. So I wanted to have it all super fresh in my head. But at the same time, I wanted to create something visually that felt true to the original material, but felt like it was here and now, that at the same time didn't feel out of place if you were to go and read the series again after reading Overture. I don't know how successful that was, but I thought it was kind of important to make it feel like it was of the series, but something that is for now, I guess.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started on Batwoman in the Detective Comics. I believe they were there was a story in Detective Comics before the ongoing series, right?
Yeah, that was with Greg Rucka. That was kind of interesting because I don't know if I can remember all these details super accurately, because there was a lot of different things I was doing at that time. But I had been commissioned to work on Seven Soldiers of Victory with Grant Morrison, doing the first bookends, the first chapter and last chapter of that big giant menagerie of stuff that he was coming up with. I also had been booked to do Detective Comics with Paul Dini, and it was kind of weird timing. So they wanted me to be the regular guy on Detective with Paul Dini, but then the Seven Soldiers stuff needed to be completed, and so I kind of got pulled away from Detective Comics in order to focus on those bookends for the Seven Soldiers of Victory stuff. But that ended up being super challenging, particularly on the last bookend, and it took a lot longer than anyone would have expected, I guess. Not just for the art, but for the writing process from Grant and all that stuff. And so by the time I got back to being free to return to Detective Comics, a lot of time had passed. That series was now in such a weird scheduling thing that no one felt confident that Paul Dini was in a position to be able to write scripts far enough in advance for me to return to Detective Comics, which was fine. You know, it was just kind of strange because DC had promoted me as being the regular guy, and I was on it for one issue and was away after that. But understandably, you know, by the time I was able to come back, Paul was super busy and just trying to, you know, keep ahead of the series as best he could and trying to accommodate a whole nother artist to work far in advance. Just, you know, it's a lot to expect of somebody. So the current editor, Pete Tomasi, at the time, you know, wanted to keep me in the Bat stable and ended up approaching me with Batwoman, you know, to find something else that I might be interested in. And when I knew it was going to be with Greg Rucka, I immediately thought it was a great idea. And what was super intriguing to me about it was being able to work in the Bat universe, but sort of presenting something fresh and new, which was kind of, I felt like, maybe more suited to me than trying to just do more Batman stuff. Because then I can kind of, like, stretch my wings and present something that people haven't seen before, I guess.
Stretch your wings,
so,
Batman.
So,
we got a Joker on the phone here.
We ended up, you know, making plans to do Batwoman as an ongoing series in her own title, and then for whatever reason, whoever makes these kinds of decisions, you know, in the upper management of DC decided, you know what, Paul Dini was going to be ending his run on Detective Comics. Why don't we just have Batwoman be in Detective Comics? And that's how that ended up happening. She originally was supposed to have her own series.
Yeah, it was delayed until the New 52, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how the Batwoman ended up in Detective Comics for the stuff that Greg Rucka wrote. I loved doing it. It was a great project to be part of, and getting to work with Greg was, you know, super thrilling. I think he's tremendous. So,
did you find it later on when you were doing the New 52 Batwoman, being the writer and artist on it yourself, a lot easier than taking someone else's scripts?
I don't know if it was easier. It's just different because I guess, I don't know. It's sort of like when I would have my writing hat on, I try my best to take my visual aspects out of the equation when writing, and then come back to the visual aspects after the script is done. And I do that because I feel like, you know, I want to be able to write stories that could be drawn for anyone could come in and draw it. So, you know, I would do fully fleshed out, me and Hayden Blackman would do fully fleshed out scripts before I would start drawing anything, you know, kind of treating it like it was two different jobs, really. So it presented different challenges, but I wouldn't say one was easier than the other. Once the scripts were done and I would start illustrating it, I kind of treated the scripts the same way I treated any other writer's scripts, which is kind of weird, realizing, you know, oh yeah, I wrote that, you know, Hayden and I wrote that together or whatever, but I would approach it as if anybody had written it and just do my thing.
So focusing more a bit on the art in Batwoman, I remember when I first picked up the first issue I saw in Detective Comics, I really loved how the style that you had it was very, I remember being it flowed, the way in which your eye movement just went with the art and the colors just made it feel like you could feel the action happening in front of you. So I don't know if you want to tell us a bit about any inspiration for the art that you have for Batwoman specifically, or just in general, the inspiration you have for what you've drawn.
Coming on to Batwoman, knowing that she takes place, you know, her story is in Gotham City, in the Bat universe, there's certain aesthetics you're going to want to adhere to in terms of moodiness and shadow, urban settings and things like that. But knowing how the character was designed with the bold use of red, I wanted to try to come up with something that was, I don't know, it's painterly, but then it's also graphically minded. And when I say graphically minded, I mean by use of bold color, even though all the textures would remind people, painted work. And I also was interested creatively in trying to create a synthesis of the ink work with the color work. So one of my goals with working with Dave Stewart on that was to try to figure out ways to where someone reading the story wasn't ever quite sure where the colors began and the inking and drawing ended. So it felt very cohesive, and that was one of the things that I was really after creatively. And then just making it feel real punchy, graphically minded, and I also wanted it to have a bit of a rock and roll flavor. And hopefully that came through in some of that stuff.
One of the most twisted, I think, I don't want to say twisted in a cruel way, but one of the most unusual Batwoman stories that you do is in Volume 1 of the trade paperbacks, and you have Batwoman's cousin, that's her cousin, Fire Flamebird or something, battling out with the giant Hookman monster. At the exact same time, in the black and white, you have Maggie and Batwoman making love to each other. And her cousin's getting ripped apart, gutted, basically,
literally.
While Maggie and Batwoman are having sex.
What do you want to know?
What was what was going on? I mean, what was the thought behind that, crafting that type of story? Is it just a matter of sex being about life and love and passion and just the brutality of a teenager having her guts ripped out in an alley?
Well, it's sort of, there's, I think, multiple layers going on there. You have, of course, the juxtaposition of something beautiful opposed and presented next to something completely horrific. And yes, there's the symbol of life and death there. But it's also symbolic of both events signify a huge change for each of those characters. Batwoman, Kate Kane, making that decision to try to move on with her romantic life with Maggie Sawyer and trying to get past her long-lost love of Renee Montoya was very, very key in moving the character into something new with her life. And so it was a very significant plot change and direction for the character on an emotional level as who they are as a person. While what was happening to Flamebird was also the same thing. That event changed her. One of our goals there was to kind of, almost every appearance that we could find of Kate, Kate's cousin, Betty Kane, there always seemed to be this cheekiness in how she was presented, almost as if she was hard to take seriously. And so one of the things we wanted to do, because one of the things we were intrigued about was the idea of, the dynamic duo, Batman and Robin, right? So for us, it kind of felt like a cool parallel would be also have Batwoman with somebody that worked against the idea of her being such a loner, feeling more of a loner than even Bruce Wayne does, while at the same time being given the use of Flamebird for that role. When we did our research, we saw all this weird stuff about how quirky the character was, and it felt like, I don't know, it just felt like she was always sort of treated immaturely, or some of the stories, the way her character was presented was immature. And so we wanted to come up with a way to jumpstart her into something more progressive than that. So by having her encounter someone like the Hook, thinking that she's got it, she's in total control, and utter denial of everything that she's been trying to be taught from her cousin, we felt like was a good way to kind of jumpstart her into a bigger plot line.
Okay.
So, going back to Batwoman herself, I remember one of the scenes that kind of stuck with me ever since reading it first in the issue was when you see the backstory of her when she's back in the military and when she basically gets discharged, and she does it herself by saying that she's not going to lie, and she basically just comes out straightforward there. And I was wondering how you went about like going through the research and finding inspiration to write that particular scene, because to me I personally love that scene because I found it so telling of like her character even when she was like much younger. Like there was so much like humanity there, so I that kind of scene has just stuck with me since then. So I was wondering if you could speak a bit to that.
I don't know, it's hard to put into words specifically. Part of that, I mean, a big part of that aspect of the plot was in Detective Comics and Greg Rucka came up with the bulk of that stuff. I mean, it was really his idea to connect it to the don't ask, don't tell stuff that a lot of people had to worry about when that story was being crafted. For me, when handling those scenes visually from Greg's writing, my goal was to make it feel, even though we were using a style that felt, for lack of a better term, nostalgic or maybe older comics, the goal was for it to feel natural and as if we're talking about real people. And I think that's the key with any of this sort of stuff, is whether you're the artist or the writer or you're doing both jobs, you know, you always want your characters to feel like when somebody reads them that they can be people that you believe in, even if it's something super fantastical, you know, such as Batwoman. So that's sort of where my mind was at when working on that stuff, is just how can we make this as real as possible, as emotionally riveting as possible, and give weight to the scenario of what's happening by doing that, by treating these, you know, Kate Kane as if she's a real person. And for me, in my mind, you know, any character I work on, I always kind of view them as if they're real. They exist somewhere out there in you know, in some other reality, and I'm just getting to tell their story. So.
We have a couple of questions on Twitter from a couple of Batwoman fans and fans of yours. Let's Talk Batwoman, or Talking Batwoman. The Twitter account is at Talking Batwoman. I never know which name actually to give it. Says, in the original ending, issues 25 and 26, what exactly would have happened? How would the fight have gone? How would the storyline been resolved in your own way? This is the ending of your arc on Batwoman due to the creative differences?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So that particular storyline was going to have 2 more chapters. The first script for it, issue 26 or 25 or 26, I can't remember what issue number you left on, had been written and fully, and I was ready, you know, we were ready to start getting it going. But the storyline overall that Hayden and I had planned went well beyond that. We had stuff set up for another, I don't know, at least another year's worth of storytelling, if not more, that we had outlined and had made plans to do. So, but with that particular arc, you know, the fight between Batwoman and Batman, one of the things we wanted to do in the next 2 chapters was show how on equal footing they actually are. And not necessarily because of skill level, but because of differences on how they think. And that's one of the things that Hayden and I tried to do very strongly. And I think Greg did this as well in his part of Batwoman, was to show how different-minded she is than Bruce Wayne. And that's the key to making the character relevant. That's the key to making the character have longevity is she's not just a female version of Batman. That would be stupid. One of the things, by pitting them up against each other on ideological reasons, would define how different they are. We didn't want the fight to come out like one dominating over the other, and that was super important. The way the fight was going to end had a lot to do with the ruse that she was pulling on Batman and on the DEO itself. So in the storyline, the DEO was after Batman's secret identity. They want to know who he is. She went and played along with it until she could get her cousin, or I mean not her cousin, but her twin sister freed from them. And so we were setting up a dual mission. While Batwoman was distracting the DEO with their obsessive agenda over Batman, using Batman himself in the fray, because Kate Kane didn't feel comfortable just going to Bruce Wayne and saying, "Hey, I need you to play along with this thing." So she set it up to have this fight between the two of them to give the DEO what they wanted, waiting for the signal from her cousin Betty Kane to say, "We've got your sister." And then the fight.
So it was later on during the current Detective Comics run with Detective Comics Rebirth that they established that Kathy and Bruce are cousins. That wasn't under you?
That wasn't up to us, no.
Okay. Bruce's mother is Kathy's father's sister.
Right.
Yes,
yeah,
that is currently the thing that making them a complete Bat family, a real Bat family. And I was like, wait a minute, I was reading Detective Comics and I'm like, I read all of the old Batwoman issues. When did that become a genealogy thing? Was that Dr. Manhattan doing things with his giant blue powers? Because, I mean, now going off on a tangent on the whole Watchmen have recreated the DC universe in their own image kind of thing, but...
Right. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Have you read the current Detective Comics and Batwoman comic books? Craig on Twitter asks.
No, I have not.
Okay.
And nothing against the creators doing that stuff, particularly Steve Epting, I think, is the one who's drawing that. He's really great.
Yes. Yes, the former Captain America artist.
Yeah, he's really great. But I haven't read that stuff primarily because, I don't know, I felt such a huge attachment to the character and had a huge investment on what we were doing with her. But I feel like I just could not be fair to anyone else writing this stuff and working on this stuff. I would feel like, I don't know, probably not fairly being too judgmental about whatever they were doing, even though what they're doing might be fantastic. You know what I mean?
The wound of what happened years ago is still there.
Yeah, and, you know, as much as I love the character, I just feel like, I don't know, it was a very personal thing for me, and yeah, I don't know, it's just one of those things. I don't know how other writers feel about that sort of thing when someone else takes over for them to, you know, I don't know how many of them continue to read beyond that, if it's something that they had a hand in creating from the floor up, you know.
I saw your little I don't remember what you said on Twitter, but I don't think it was me, it might have been someone else, had tweeted to you about the upcoming live-action Batwoman will first appear in a porno. What do you think of that? Any comment?
Nope.
You gotta admit, it's a little funny, though, right?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. From what I understand, I mean, there's been porn parodies of superheroes for, I don't know, probably decades at this point.
Yeah, since the superhero genre has exploded the last 10 years.
Something like that would happen.
And then Batwoman showed up in Batman Bad Blood, the animated movie, and she was okay. The movie kind of sucked. The plot line behind it was terrible. It was It was really bad, but it was kind of cool to see Batwoman brought to life in animation finally. Well, that version of Batwoman.
I haven't seen it, so even though I haven't seen stuff like that or seen her in any of the video games or any of the other comics that people are doing, the only thing I want is for the character to thrive and have a legacy and go on and be, and have all the other creators love her just as much as Hayden and I did. So,
if they asked you to come back to it, would you?
It'd be tough, I think, because I still have a lot of belief in the storylines that we had planned and what we were really the long-term goal of what we were going to do. And I just don't know if I could return to the character as a writer without having that sticking in my head, because a lot of that stuff might not work anymore based on what other people have done. And I've always been the sort of person that I feel it's super important not to go in and say, and disregard everything that's happened before. I've seen that done sometimes, and it always sits wrong with me, and I feel like everyone else's contributions at that point would have to be relevant to any new material that I might come up with, and that probably would end up being in conflict with what I foresaw for the character, and not just her, but her supporting cast.
Yeah,
so I don't know. I just don't think I would feel comfortable with it.
They kind of did that with another Bat-related character, 35 issues, written really well one way, and then, bam, the next issue, the character is so radically different. In fact, she looks so de-aged, too, compared to the way she was being drawn previously. I think it was Batgirl. The overhaul they did from what Gail Simone was writing to the next creative team within the New 52. I haven't read the Rebirth stuff. It's like a completely different version of the character. I mean, they set up the post.
Right.
Batgirl came back out of the wheelchair and she got to walk again, but she still has PTSD from what the Joker did to her, and stuff like that. Right. And it's like all that stuff got thrown out the window with the new creative team. In fact, again, Batgirl was drawn to be like in her mid-20s or something, like the same age as Dick Grayson, but now she looks like she's a teenager now.
But she's in college.
Yeah, but she wasn't in college in Gail Simone's run.
Right,
I mean, she's supposed to be the same age as Dick Grayson. Yeah. And Dick Grayson is portrayed again as like his mid-20s or so. He's long past his little Speedo. So Batgirl had this traumatic experience. She was Oracle. She grew as a character. Right. She became a she became a woman, and then now it's just she kind of acts. The way that she's drawn and acts, it's like a teenager.
Right. That's the sort of thing. Nothing against what the new creative team was trying to do there, but I almost feel like when if that kind of radical change is going to take place, then maybe what needs to happen is that the character goes away for a while, and then it gets brought back and revisited from a new perspective, so people have time to let what they had originally read to, become a little bit murkier in their mind, and not be so married to what they had just read the month before. I don't know. That's just how I feel about that sort of stuff. And so, if I was to return to Batwoman, I feel like I wouldn't be doing the other creators that worked on the character any respect or justice to ignore anything that they've contributed. I think that's always just bad to do. And I think that hopefully that perspective was extremely clear when Hayden and I took over from Greg. And we basically did everything we could to make it feel like a logical, direct continuation from what Greg was doing. And a lot of the things we had come up with for some of the B story and Kate Kane's psychology and the things she was dealing with emotionally and psychologically, all stemmed from the roots of what Greg, the seeds that he had planted. And we just wanted to see where we could take it and explore it. So,
hey, JH, we really appreciate you coming out and talking with us a little bit about what you've got coming up, and of course one of our favorite characters, Batwoman, and what you did for her. Obviously, you're well aware that the characters are pretty big in the LGBT community, and it shows your support by writing the character in a very extremely positive LGBT light throughout its throughout most of what people are familiar with for the character.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all that for Hayden and I, that was super important, and I know it was super important for Greg when he was writing the character too. I mean, if you're going to be handling a character that has those personality traits and aspects to their life, you have to tackle it from a realistic perspective. You have to tackle it from a place of respect. To do anything else, I think, is not human.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, JH, why don't you give out your Twitter where people can find you?
What is my Twitter handle?
I don't have it memorized, so you'd have to tell me. And I'm on the phone, so I can't. It's hard to look it up.
At JH Williams the third, like JH Williams 3. Right now, my what do you call it?
Do you have it, Yang?
Nickname, whatever.
It's Beware a Mad Wizard at JH Williams 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to your next project coming out. It's been a while since we'd seen anything from you on the newsstand, on the comic book rack. So whatever project you got coming out, I'm sure the fans will definitely gravitate towards it.
I hope so.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again for doing this. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.